But today we're going to do something different. We had a YouTuber actually respond to one of our videos, and we really appreciate him. His name is Philip Arm. He wrote us, asked us. We said, sure, great, go for it. He sent us the link. We watched it, and I wasn't initially, Lacey hasn't seen this yet, just FYI. But I watched it, and initially I was like, oh, we're not going to bother responding. But then it got, within a couple of minutes, it got kind of wild. And so I thought, okay, I'll watch the rest of it. And so I watched the rest of it. And he kind of inadvertently brings up a lot of stuff that Lacey and I have complained about for months. We just never have enough time because we only have enough time for our schedules to do one 90-minute show a week. That's all we got, because they take a lot of prep time too. It's not like, it takes at least 5 to 10 hours of research, depending on the episode, right? So for us, it's kind of like, wow. And so he brought up a lot of stuff that we have all this extra research we never get in because we're trying to keep it tight. But he brought up this stuff, so I thought, well, we'll just go over his video today because he inadvertently steps into a bunch of this stuff, right? The other last thing I want to just hit on real quick is the when they do this whole thing about, it's about, you just have to sacrifice. It's about personal responsibility, and Phil's going to end with that, and I'm just going to skip it because it's a long-winded, Deepak Chopra, Tony Robbins kind of speech. And it's great if you want to check out Phil. Like I said, we don't have any problem with Phil. We think he's a nice guy and everything, but he's just wrong. And we just kind of wanted to point out, because he brought up kind of as a lightning rod a lot of issues we've wanted to talk about for months. And that was, we thank him for that. We really thank him for doing this video because it opened up a big window for us. But the big sort of overall arching thing is there's a lot of conservative thought that permeates here. And the Dave Ramsey show is definitely one of them. I mean, they're tied in with Fox News and the Daily Wire and all these right-wing sites. And that's where they're pushing for their audience and stuff. But the big argument about all this stuff is that it's all about personal responsibility. If you just take control of your life, right, and you just make the smart choices, you'll be rich too, right? We've known for decades that is not the case. And I have one last thing to show you. So this is just one of fucking thousands of studies that have been done. But this is a Georgetown study, an article. And they found wealth, not ability, the biggest predictor of future success. Right? So they had pointed out here, a big part of the so-called American dream promises if people work hard enough, no matter how poor they are, they'll find success. It turns out that's not completely true. Young people who are minorities or from working class or low income who are talented when they're young, they don't make it to the finish line. Carnival is the professor did it. They said the study goes all the way into the labor market, and in the end, the loss rate of these young people is huge. So they looked at a bunch of data and found that poor students are less likely to become wealthy by age 25 than not so smart rich students. And then they go on to explain. And the reason is because kids with money, people who grow up with money, have more advantages, more opportunities. You could be the smartest.
We've addressed this in several videos.
Yeah. But that's the point is, look, yeah, you have to take personal responsibility and make smart choices. Sure. We're not arguing against that. That's a given, right? The point is, though, is if you're starting out behind the 8 ball, it's a lot harder to succeed. You don't have the connections, you don't have the money, you don't have the resources, as opposed to a rich kid who's half your ability. So this idea that it's just all about personal responsibility is bullshit. There is a systemic issue, and that's what we're talking about when we were talking about this with the living wage situation. And they ignore it completely because to address it would blow up their entire philosophy. And I think that's when we started, where Phil starts out with, well, even in America, if you're poor, you're still living like a king, right? Because then with that, then I can dismiss that there's any systemic problem in the United States that needs to be addressed. And I can just, no, it's all just about personal choice, which allows you to ignore the bigger problems and ignore the fact that, half these people are below the living wage. Half of American workers, almost 100 million people. So, I mean, I appreciate Phil. I appreciate everything he did. It was great. I don't think he's a bad person or he hates poor people or anything. I think his heart's in the right place. I just think he didn't understand any of that. And I think that's the problem is it's easier to follow guys like Ken and George who don't even know what they're talking about because they just wrap it up in a nice little, well, if you just do XYZ, it'll all be, tits and champagne, unicorns and rainbows. But
follow this formula and go.
Buy my miracle elixir and everything will work out fine. That's how they make their money. So I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to add, but I